We're now live, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the West Yorkshire Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. First of all, if we go through the procedural items, so do we have any substitutes?
No, Chair.
No. Any members wishing to make any disclosures of any items on the agenda? Nope. The meeting is live streamed and it's open to the public. So if I can just remind members to leave your mobile phones switched off or on silent, and if all members of the committee can actually leave your video switched on so that we can see you, and any member wishing to speak from the public, if you can leave your videos off until it's time for you to speak. Okay, so first of all, we've got public deputations.
Thank you, Chair. Could we, just to remind new members, what happens is members of the public can make deputations up to 5 minutes, although usually shorter than that, and read them out themselves. Is it okay if we ask, I think Christine Hyde, is Christine Hyde here? Yeah. So, Chair, if Christine Hyde could read her deputation out.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm Christine Hyde, and I'd like to say, what statutory form is the new West Yorkshire and Harrogate Integrated Care System, NHS, likely to take? Does the ICS think it will be a new form of trust, like the Integrated Care Provider Trust, that was a feature of NHS England's proposed long-term plan primary legislation back in 2019? At the time strongly supported by the Health and Social Care Select Committee? Or is it more likely to be an integrated accountable care organisation, although only integrated NHS mental and physical health services, not social care? Or do you envisage other possible statutory options? Shall I read them all out? That's the first one. Whatever the detail of its statutory form, what range of West Yorkshire and Harrogate NHS services is it likely to be the lead provider for? And how does the ICS envisage it will discharge its commissioning subcontracting functions? And particularly in the absence of competitive tendering, public procurement regulation and the Competition and Markets Authority, how will it select the subcontractors? What is important to the new integrated care system in this new provider selection context?
Okay, thank you so much for that, Christine.
Rosemary.
Hello, thank you. I'm Rosemary Hedges, speaking on behalf of Calderdale and Kirklees 999 call for the NHS. These are my questions. Will the West Yorkshire and Harrogate ICO invite private and third sector companies and charities to provide ICS-wide services? If so, will these subcontractors have a place on the statutory ICS NHS board? And what about the place-based integrated commissioners stroke providers that, with the move of hospital services into care closer to home, will be responsible for the whole range of services provided by primary care networks? At the moment, as far as we can gather, these services are commissioned and overseen by members of place-level integrated commissioning executives, made up of local authorities, CCGs, PCN clinical directors and others, in a form of alliance contracting. Will these be replaced by place level ICOs? And if so, are they likely to retain the 3 current options within the ACO contract that was subject to public consultation some time ago, of virtual, in brackets, alliance, partially integrated and fully integrated contracts? The last option seeing GP practices surrender their GP contracts and become employees of the ICO. Thank you. That's the end of my questions.
Okay, thank you. Jenny Shepherd? Jenny, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I'm Jenny Shepherd. I'm making a deputation on behalf of Calderdale and Kirklees 999 call for the NHS2, and thanks for the chance to do this. And like the others, I've got a series of questions. So following on from Rosemary's questions about the place of GPs within place level integrated care systems or organisations or whatever they become, I'd like to ask, what would be the role of the GP federations in these place-based integrated care organisations? And how will these place-based integrated care organisations be organisationally linked to the West Yorkshire and Harrogate level integrated care statutory body and the statutory NHS integrated care NHS board? Next question is, do people know whether all the West Yorkshire GP federations are increasing their retained earnings and shareholder funds like the Pennine GP Alliance is? Their recently published 2020 accounts show their retained earnings have more or less doubled since 2019, and that these make up the bulk of the shareholder fund, which similarly has more or less doubled in 2020. My next question is, given the current large-scale takeovers of GP practices by big companies like Hurley, Modality, and Operus Health, which is owned by the USA Centene Corporation, does the integrated care system think an increase in GP federations' corporate value makes them rich pickings for such companies, including Operus Health and Centene? Next question, what would be the view of West Yorkshire and Harrogate integrated care system if the place-based integrated care organisations, where GP federations look most likely to be the lead provider, were owned and run by such companies, especially Operus Health, which with its habit of dumping NHS contracts that it can't profit from, and its UK parent company's reliance on deficit funding from its US parent as a means of avoiding paying UK tax? Next question. Operus Health is one of the main companies on the Health Support Services framework, which sells commissioning support and backroom services to integrated care systems to enable them to move down the road to operating as statutory integrated care organisations. Operus Health's parent company owns 40% of the private health company Circle, which in turn owns the BMI hospital chain. What are councillors and the integrated care system's views on Centene's degree of control over the commissioning and providing functions of regional and local integrated care organisations, particularly given increasing use of private hospital chains to treat NHS payments? And my final question, I'm asking this particularly since entire NHS pathways in areas such as Greenwich, where Operus Health owns GP practices, are now entirely owned by that company and its parent, with the result that a patient can go through a whole range of treatment that's provided by private, profiteering GP, community health services and hospital without once receiving care from a publicly owned, run and managed NHS organisation. And that's the lot of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Devlin. Jennifer, you're still on mute and off camera.
Sorry, Jennifer Devlin from the North Kirklees NHS Support Group. Question 1. The white paper talks about integration, but is very vague about the detail of what's being integrated with what. In the absence of a green paper, or indeed any paper about social care, which is in itself in a parlour state, is the new West Yorkshire and Harrogate ICS NHS structure, or whatever it is, going to commission social care through its council partners and fund that provision while allowing councils freedom to organise it how they wish? Or B, is it going to direct council partners to commission specifics and expect them to foot the bill through traditional funding streams? Or C, will it be some other arrangement, and if so, what? Next question. Since the white paper is largely a continuation of the 5-year forward view and the cuts and enhanced incentive and shared incentive contracts making up the shared financial risk of the whole system and rewarding providers who reduce spending with a share of the savings, is an American tactic for making cuts. So how is the traditional ethos of an English health service going to endure in West Yorkshire and Harrogate? Next and last question. Our GP practices are vulnerable to predatory takeover bids by large US corporations like Centene. The consequences of such corporate takeovers are GP practice closures and reduced access to medical advice and treatment for patients. CCGs have to approve such arrangement, but in some cases, CCGs have apparently held meetings at short notice and even in secret before giving approval. Can we be assured that any such approaches to CCGs in West Yorkshire and Harrogate will be resisted? Thank you.
That's all the deputations, Councillor Greenwood.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you all very much for your questions, and we will take them all into consideration in any of our future discussions regarding the white paper. So thank you again. Okay, so we'll move on now to item 5. Report back from the workshop held on Monday, the 22nd of March 2021. And I think, Mike, you're going to give us that report back.
Well, I think, Chair, actually, the report back could actually be dealt with under item 6 and item 7. I put that in as a sort of hold all in case there are other things to discuss. Could I just say that the Ian Holmes from the partnership has agreed with me that he and I will draft a response to the questions that the people have made this under deputations. But bearing in mind the point that Ian Holmes made is that this is early days in the white paper and the legislation isn't in front of Parliament yet, so some of the answers may not be, final answers. Thank you, Chair.
That's great. Thank you, Mike, for that. Okay, so item 6, white paper. We've had an informal meeting before this today, and there was quite a lot of things discussed, and some decisions were reached. I think we're going to go over to Mike now again, who's going to give a brief summary of what we discussed.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind the Joint Committee that your suggestion, which you may want to endorse in this formal meeting, was that the Chair should write to the Secretary of State setting out the views and concerns of the Scrutiny Committee. that letter should be circulated to all West Yorkshire MPs and also should be published once it's agreed. And the process for doing that is that Councillor Greenwood will circulate a draft letter to all members of the Scrutiny Committee for their views, and that letter will be finalised by discussion and then sent to the Secretary of State. And the other part of the discussion in terms of the process is that the West Yorkshire Partnership will come and report. West Yorkshire Partnership told us that they are working on 6 work streams in terms of planning for the implementation of the white paper and the legislation as it comes through, and that they will come to a formal meeting of this board held in public in the summer, and Ian Holmes and I will work out a precise date. I would suspect it'll be July, to report on in public on progress on those 6 work streams. Thank you, Chair. You're on mute, Councillor Greenwood.
Sorry, thank you for that, Mike. Everyone's okay with that? Okay, item 7, Nightingale hospitals. What I'll do now is hand this over to Councillor Clark, who's the councillor that's called for a public inquiry on this. So over to you, Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. As you said at the last meeting, I asked this to be put on today's agenda, and thank you very much. I think this committee has taken a great interest in the Nightingale hospitals, and particularly the one in Harrogate, which served the people of Yorkshire. And we have taken a great interest and have discussed it on a number of occasions at meetings. And I think it's important we remember on this day, as we approach the anniversary of the start of the first lockdown, the amazing work that has been done by the staff at all throughout the health voluntary sectors and other parts of our community over the past years, and we thank them all for what they have done. The Nightingale Hospital at Harrogate was built in a very quick time and provided up to 500 beds, and which was quite a substantial change for those of us who live particularly in North Yorkshire, are more used to beds closing than beds being provided. But it was a tremendous effort, and it was done in double quick time. There was it was set up as an emergency hospital to start with, and we looked at that. But moving further on, you may remember in August, this committee wrote a joint letter from the chairman of the committee at that time, Councillor Hayden, and myself to the NHS, asking them to keep the Nightingale open at least until the end of March, which, as you know, is next week. And within a week, we had a decision back from the NHS saying that the Nightingale would stay open for another 6 months. And as it happened, we were right to ask for that. While the hospital wasn't used, it was there if we would have needed it. And indeed, we then had another spike, and we're just coming out of the situation that confronted us. So we had tremendous foresight at that time, and since then we have had the Nightingale on the agenda. And indeed, at one time, we suggested it might be used as a vaccination centre, but that wasn't taken up. Therefore, I think we now need to look at the lessons we can learn from the having had the Nightingale. We haven't had to use it, but I think we need to know how we would have staffed it, and what capacity it would have been able to provide, where the staff would have come from the other hospitals, and what effect that would have had on the services within the rest of Yorkshire, and there are a number of questions that need asking that we won't, I won't go into here. But I think we should remember at the same time that the only reason we have not needed to use the hospital, it has been used for some scanning work for both Harrogate District Hospital and Leeds hospitals, but it wasn't used for any of the COVID patients at all. But I think we need to look into this, and I think it was only because of the tremendous work done by the frontline staff in our other hospitals that we didn't have to use it, and we should always remember that at this time, with the staff in our hospitals that have had a very difficult and trying time, and we all thank them for that. But there are a number of questions. I actually, at the last meeting, I thought it might be something that we needed a public inquiry. I think other people are now mentioning that as well. But I think this committee, because of its knowledge and the record it has of looking at health issues in Yorkshire, should put on its agenda for the next meeting how we can find out how the capacity and the staff would have, had the hospital been used, how it would have been staffed, and to carry out a number of investigations, which we would then pass on to any public inquiry that might be held at a later date. But I think it's important that we look at the issues now while they're fresh in our minds, and while we're pleased that we did not have to use the facility, that we can learn lessons, so that if we ever have to do that again, we will be able to build on the knowledge we have. And therefore I would suggest that we put on our next agenda some work on, which I will discuss with officers of how we might take this forward. So and I would like to move that we move this forward to do an investigation, and would to do that as soon as we can, which would be the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. And I'm sure you speak for all of us in thanking all the NHS staff for all their hard work and dedication throughout this whole pandemic. It's been a magnificent effort. Right, sorry, Mike, it's over to you again.
Councillor Smage had a quick comment to make.
Oh, did she? Apologise. I've got the sun shining on my screen, so I can't see your hand. Sorry,
it's okay. I just wondered if we could also move that we write to Rob Webster as the head of the ICS to thank all the staff that have worked over the past 12 months and continue to work in this very difficult times. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay, Mike.
Okay, so can I just confirm, Chair, that what the committee is agreeing is that we will have an investigation ourselves, as Councillor Clark suggested, at the next meeting, and I think that just brings us on to future work programme and next steps, if that's all right with you, Chair. So following the discussions you've had, we're planning the first meeting of the new municipal year on the 22nd of June. We'll have to have discussions outside the meeting about the agenda for that. The item on the Nightingale hospitals will depend on making sure we can assemble the group of people who need to come and give you evidence on a date. So I would be looking to do it on the 22nd of June, but if that's not possible, very shortly after that, and to arrange another meeting, probably in July, to focusing on the white paper and progress on the 6 work streams that we learnt about earlier. And I would suggest, Chair, although we haven't discussed this, that you and I should meet with Ian Holmes from the West Yorkshire Health and Care Partnership to talk about a work programme for the year to bring for consideration on the 22nd of June to include progress on the West Yorkshire and Harrogate Health and Care Partnership's 5-year strategy. And you've always had all your meetings except this one recently, a COVID update. So I'd imagine that would still be the case in June. So if that's all right with members of the committee, that's the way we'll take this forward.
Everybody okay with that? We may even be able to meet in person on the 22nd of June, who knows? And it's a day after my birthday as well, so I'll be a year older. Okay, well, that was a nice, short and sweet meeting. So we'll see you